Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm with Karen Jenkins. Karen, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, so Karen, you're the CEO and president of KRJ Consulting, where you provide a full suite of consulting services from leadership consulting to organizational consulting. You're a speaker, an author, a finance expert. You've also been recognized as a Woman of the Year by the Enterprising Women magazine, and you won a whole bunch of other awards. You were just letting me know that before we hit record, you've also been doing some kind of mentorship with other businesses in your local area there. Uh, but your background, let's kind of start there because you've been an adjunct professor, you've been kind of in the mortgage banking world. Just bring us kind of up to speed for everyone listening. How did you get into the world of consulting?
It was not by choice. I was in banking and then mortgage banking for a total of 23 years. And for as far as I knew, that was going to be my plan. I was going to retire from there, go up the corporate ladder and retire. My first transition came in, I think it was 1996. I had been with the bank about 12 years and they wanted me to relocate to Charlotte. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, and we don't have traffic here, or at least I call it play traffic. And Charlotte has some real traffic issues. So, I went on a limb and got a position with another small mortgage company called RBMG. There were two independently owned mortgage companies at the time. Countrywide was one, and they were the big monstrosity, and we were the little guys. So loved that job. It was similar to what I was doing, but just on the mortgage side. Loved it. Thought I was going to retire from there, and was there for 11 years, and then got laid off in 2007. And when I looked around at the time, there weren't many positions that were, on the level that I was looking for. I did not want to relocate. So I was guided. I'll have to say that. I was guided into opening up my own mortgage company. My nephew had recently relocated here to Columbia, and we got together and opened up a mortgage brokerage firm in 2007. Well, you know what happened in 2008. So, because of my mortgage banking background, a nonprofit reached out to me in 2008 looking for somebody with my expertise because I am also a certified mortgage banker. And we were facing for everybody that was in the state facing foreclosure. They had a program and set up to help prevent foreclosure. So I signed up with them. They wanted me, but not my mortgage company because mortgage companies were part of the problem. So I actually created KRJ Consulting to be a service provider for them. We, from April of 2008 to December 2008, we saved about 148 homes and probably could have done more, but everybody didn't turn in their paperwork on time. And then in 2009, we went more to an outreach for them and an intake. So we went out marketing the program, letting everybody know that it was available. And then we did the intake of the clients and then sent them down to Charleston for the actual one-on-one counseling. That was really eye-opening for me. And from a financial literacy perspective, I realized that about 65% of the people that were there didn't have to be. So I wrote a book called Nobody Told Me: The Path to Financial Empowerment to help those people who had kind of gotten that financial ditch, give them tips on how to get out. And then those people that were headed that way, how to prevent yourselves from going in that path. And then you mentioned an adjunct professor. So you kind of, there was business, but there really wasn't business. So I became an adjunct professor in a couple of local colleges here and loved that. And I think that was the opening for me that I realized I love teaching. I love helping other people, get empowered to use their superpowers. So I decided at that point, it was 2012, that I rebranded KRJ Consulting to be a consulting, training, and development firm. I worked with it, and I'm sure that your listeners may have it there, but here we have a small business development center funded by the Small Business Administration, and they are awesome consultants that at no cost provide support to local small businesses. We have about 22 in our state alone, so I know there are a whole bunch around the country. And working with them, came up with my strategy and my plan, got introduced to federal government contracting, and in 2013 received or got signed up to start doing business with the federal government, and kind of been in that space ever since. Just recently, over the last, say, 18 months, we've looked at now leveraging our offering that we have with the federal government to now go to the corporate side and small business as well.
Got you. You mentioned that with that nonprofit, when you were in that role, you went kind of from working with them to now the second stage was almost doing outreach and marketing the program for them. Um, I didn't really hear you talk much about your marketing skill set, or that you had a deep level of experience or expertise with marketing. So how did you even feel about marketing, and what did you learn from that experience that maybe you took with you to your consulting business when you kind of restarted that?
Well, the issue, or not the issue, but one of the biggest lessons I learned with marketing is it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Mm,
And when you talk about marketing to people, a lot of people, they confuse marketing and sales, right? And then when you hear the word sales, the first thing you think about is the insurance agent, knocking at your door, somebody trying to sell you something you don't really want.
yeah.
And sales is not about selling. To me, sales is about solving a problem that every person in the world has a multitude of things or issues or problems that they need to have solved. And then if you are a small business, or a big business for that matter, and you can provide the solution, it is easier to go out and get what you call sales, because you're not going to somebody and say, hey, give me your money. You're going to them saying, hey, you have an issue. Let me make sure you understand that I understand what that problem is. And then here's the solution that I can provide you.
Mm. Would you say that that kind of belief and mindset has been beneficial for you in terms of going out to new prospective ideal clients and not hesitating? Because I think a lot of consultants, I mean, I don't think I know, I've seen this firsthand for last decade plus. There's a lot of hesitation on going out to people that they don't have a relationship with, and even those that they do have a relationship with, sometimes they hesitate because they don't want to come across as salesy. So what do you kind of tell yourself, or any other advice that you might offer to people who know they have a lot of value that they can deliver and that they can truly help people, but again, they are seeing that word sales, you kind of describe it as like the insurance salesperson, or it's just more like salesy and promotional, but not really focusing on value? What advice might you offer those people?
Well, one of the most important words that you said in what you just shared was relationship, because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And if I'm coming to you, Michael, for the very first time, and I could have the best product since sliced bread, if you don't know me, why would you do business with me? The flip side of that is, if you already have a provider, then I come in telling you that I'm offering, some water. What makes my water different than anybody else's water? I look at Dawn dish detergent, for example. Dawn came into a market that was saturated. There was Joy, there was, Palmolive, there were so many different dishwashing liquids, and most people were brand loyal. If you grew up with Palmolive in your house, that's probably what you had when you got older. So it's the brand loyalty. But what Dawn did was they came up with a differentiator. You don't have to pour the entire bottle in the sink to get suds. So they made a concentrated solution that cut grease, because that was the main reason you end up having to do new dishwater, right? So the question that you have to ask yourself is, one, what differentiates you? What is your secret sauce or unique selling proposition that makes you different than everybody else? But then when you talk about consulting, you're really talking about not necessarily a commodity or a product, you're talking about a service. So now you're talking about building a relationship. So when I meet people and build a relationship so that they can begin to know, like, and trust me. And when they do that, then they typically come around asking for my product. I don't necessarily have, all I have to do is make them aware that I have one. And it's, oh yeah, that's Karen J Consulting. Let's call her, or let's call her team, because we know, what they offer. The third thing that would be most helpful is that when you provide your service to your client, that you ask for testimonials, because you can talk about your service and product all day long, but it comes so well received when it's coming from your clients, that they're telling you're telling about your greatness. And then I've seen a lot of people on the bottom of their email signatures, or maybe on the bottom of their card, that says, hey, the best compliment that you can give me is a referral to somebody that you think that might need my service. So ask your clients, who do you know that might also need my service? And if they walk you in the door, somebody's going to pick up the phone.
So Karen, on that, when have you found it most effective to ask for a testimonial? When do you guys do that? What have you found to work best?
Immediately following the delivery.
Okay.
If you walk away from that client, and it's not that they don't want to do it for you, they're going to be really, really busy. They're going to be really, really busy. So you may ask if you're doing a presentation or a training, you can ask for volunteers at the back of the room to come and do. Hey, here's a cell phone. Really, it's just that simple to have them record a video testimonial. I always do what I call after action reviews or a survey. If I'm doing a speech or if I'm doing a training or some type of meeting group, where I'm going to give them a document where they can actually give, some feedback, because I need feedback. I'm not perfect. We're not perfect in what we do. And the best compliment that our customers can give us is feedback on how we can make it better. So those are the times immediately following that I would say would be the best time.
And what about referrals? So kind of talk us through how do you approach referrals, or what have you seen work best to get more referrals and introductions?
I love referrals. And again, it's back to the specifically asking your clients, hey, do you know 2 or 3 people that you can introduce me to that might, benefit from my service? And again, it's back to the introduction. Now, when you get the introduction, one, you have to remember that your client trusted you enough to allow you to use their name. So you have to come with your super, super, super A game. The other thing is, although they are introducing you to their friend, colleague, or whatever, it doesn't guarantee a sale. And the last thing you want to do is walk in immediately and say, hey, buy this. When they're introducing you so that you can begin to build that relationship, right? What value can you add to them before you even walk in the door to ask for any business? And it doesn't cost a lot. What is there an article that you read that you think that might be beneficial to that client? Is there maybe you did a white paper that you can share to kind of validate your past performance or validate your knowledge about that specific topic?
And Karen, I think you've grown your business now. Is it 18 team members? How many people do you have on your team?
We were at 34 earlier this year.
Okay.
And then COVID happened, and we're down to 21 now.
Okay. What have you found is that for you, like the transition from when you started the business and you were really like working in the business, doing all like the delivery and all that stuff to now, like just kind of walk us through the shift that you've made over the years. Like, hey, I started doing these things. Today I'm focused on doing these things. What does that look like?
So I'll tell you, it's still a work in progress, and it's still a challenge. And you're so right. When I first started, it was a company of me, and I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I was a salesperson. I was the person that delivered the service. And then as we began to get contracts, I hired people to go in the field to do the execution of the work.
Right.
And I stayed in and handled operation, but still working in and not on the business. And once we got to a certain level, I realized, oh my gosh, I've gone beyond my cable toe. I cannot take on any more business. And the only way that you grow is you have to learn how to scale.
Well, sorry, just to jump in, apologize for interrupting. What was going on like at that time when you reached that tipping point? If you could just describe a little more of like, we were at this level of revenue, or I was like, my hair was on fire. Obviously that wouldn't happen for me, but like what was kind of going on for you, just so that people could maybe better identify that they might be in a similar place?
So we had several contracts that we had with the federal government, and we went after a big one. Thank God we partnered with another company, and we did a joint venture, or a teaming agreement, I should say. And we won the contract, which was going to add, I think, 16 people on my staff and another 13 people on their staff. So altogether we were adding 29 people. The oxygen left the room, to be honest. The rah, oh yeah, we won our very first big contract. And then all of a sudden the oxygen leaves the room, because you're like, oh, wait a minute, I have to deliver now. And what does that mean? And I can't do this by myself. I just can't. So it was, okay, what resources do I need to be able to manage this process and to continue to run my day-to-day business? So my first hire was an administrative person that I knew. Actually, it was my cousin. And I told her, I said, come on in, and I have no idea where we're going or how we're going to do it. And the way that I described it is we were going down I-95 and trying to change all 4 tires at the same time. And we were running about 80, 90 miles an hour. She had to come in and sit on my hip because unfortunately, and this is one thing I will share with your listeners, if you're a small business and you're just getting started, document your procedures. And it is so hard to do because you're doing this, and the last thing you have time for, you think you have time for, is documenting your procedures. But what happened with me was everything I did was in my head. And I knew where it was because it was in my head. I knew how to do it because it was in my head. But once you bring someone else on to ensure continuity of service, to ensure continuity of processes, you have to document that process. So I had her sit with me, and she, as I did it, she documented it, and we got it, out on paper so that we could have a set of fully documented policies and procedures, so that as we brought other people in, they knew what was going on. And if I wasn't,
Karen, sorry, what did that cover?
the
SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures that you were kind of building. Was it, take us through, like, did you have to the nitty gritty of how to send an email or how to enter in like an invoice? Just give us a sense of what level of detail were you going to, and maybe what were some of the first SOPs that you developed?
So for the task that I had to get off of me, invoicing was definitely the critical, because that's how you get paid, right? So we had to, how do you go into QuickBooks and send out the invoice? How do you submit it to the client? We had probably 4 or 5 contracts, and each one of them, maybe 3 were submitted through this channel and 2 were this way and 1. So there were different ways of submitting invoices. How do you verify that you've got your invoices back in a timely manner, because you don't want your outstanding invoices to go so long. When we did onboarding, when we got a new contract in, what is our onboarding process? We had to document that. How do we hire people? We ended up getting to a point where we outsourced our payroll. And then as a part of that, they brought in an HR component. So we didn't have to do that anymore. But we did have to document. Now that we're passing off that function, there were things within the, with in-house that we had to still be responsible for. So we had to write down, okay, you company, you're going to handle this for us, but what is our role? And how do we reach you? What else did we document? Paying in, so that was sending out invoices, paying invoices, the onboarding of staff. Let me think, I'm trying to think of, there's so many things. Those were probably the major ones that we initially started with, because you have to have people that can do that function if you're not there. And
let me ask you, so when you mentioned that you won this big contract, I mean, is it fair to say that in many cases you would focus on winning the business first and then finding the talent to fulfill on that delivery? Is that accurate, or?
Well, in a lot of cases, if we talk about federal government side, when you go after the contract, you have to know you have a pool of candidates, because the last thing you want to do is sign a contract that you've been awarded and realize you don't have it. So you want to test the market. And in a lot of cases, some of the contracts will require you to do some mini recruiting ahead of time and get letters of intent. So you'll do some mini recruiting, find potential client, a potential staff that says, hey, if we get this contract, you'll come on board. And do it that way. So there's a lot of grinding when it comes to these federal contracts and being able to do that. In some cases, you might pick up the staff from the previous contractor. You don't know that. Sometimes you don't even know if there is one. So you have to be prepared. And when you talk about federal, and it's probably worse with federal contracts, but I know, corporate contracts are the same way. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
Right.
We
about federal contracts, I mean, a lot of consultants stay away from the whole federal or just government contract, regardless of where you are in the world, because it screams things like RFPs and 50, 100, 200 pages of documents and a lot of work. So for someone who might be thinking about tapping into it, because it can be a very lucrative source of revenue and a great way to diversify, not necessarily right for everyone, but for someone who's considering that, what advice might you offer them? Like, what would be the 1 or 2 things you would say, hey, if you're going to do that, you really need to make sure that these things are in place?
If my recommendation is that the first venture into government contracting should be as a subcontractor. which
Why?
means that there's a prime contractor out there that has all of the RFP responsibility, all of the contract compliance responsibility, all of the reporting responsibility, and they hire you to come in and get introduced to that space. And that gives you a chewable chunk that you can now get acclimated to a process. Now, for you, and it'll be a trickle down, whatever's required, and here it is, but you don't have to have this big mammoth, as you said, 100, 200 page RFP, and then your response back to them is another, 75, 80 pages back. It is a lot. It is not for the weak at heart, but it can be very lucrative. It's totally different from commercial. You have commercial decision makers that can drop of a dime, make a decision based off of a relationship or whatever they want to do. It is not that way. The federal acquisition regulation they refer to as the FAR is this big, huge monstrosity of a database that you have to know. And because in the contract itself, they're going to not put those words in there. They're going to reference the portion of the FAR that you are now obligated to abide by. And then you signed it, so you have to abide by it. So I would definitely say being a and there are small businesses out there that do extremely well, making lots and lots of money just in the subcontracting capacity.
Right. Right. Yeah, we have some clients that we work with who do that, and I know it works very well for them. You've done a lot of government contract work over the years. You mentioned kind of when we started that you're venturing into doing more work in the corporate sector. Why? What's kind of the strategic thinking behind that decision?
Well, to diversify, to not be solely dependent on the federal government. You may recall the year before last, government shut down. We weren't as negatively impacted as others because our dollars were previously allocated and committed. So our contracts continued. But there were other federal contractors that when the federal government froze, they stopped working. The federal employees stopped working, but when they came back, was it 30 something days later, they were paid in arrears. They got caught up on the monies that they lost. These small businesses did not have that pleasure. Right. So, being able to take our service, our product and offering and go out and help others outside of the government, we still will stay there. We want to stay there. But we think we can have a impact on our client side as well.
And what shifts are you making to be able to kind of pull that off successfully? What does that strategy look like? What are you doing or planning to do to start building the pipeline of corporate clients and essentially do your marketing and client acquisition effectively?
Exactly what I just shared was I'm going out now building relationships. Mm-hmm. So I'm putting myself out right now to have people know who I am, to learn how to trust me and to hopefully like me. And once I do that, when I get to the point where I can start having that conversation about our services and the solutions that we bring to solve their problems, I will have an ear versus me just cold calling and picking up the phone and going and trying to talk to someone. So I've joined several organizations where I'm actually serving. I'm in my servant leadership role. I'm always in my servant leadership role, and I've always done that. But now I'm doing it from a sense of I'm going to serve. I will continue to serve, but in serving, I'm going to meet other servant leaders who I could potentially do business with.
And what's your kind of thought process around the timeline, like in terms of expectations? Are you coming into this going, yeah, I want to generate new corporate business within 60 days, 120 days? Are you thinking a year, 2 years, 5 years? Like what's kind of the timeline that in your mind would be acceptable and that you're working towards where you think the actions that you're taking, the relationships that you're building will actually start to kind of bear some fruit for you?
So I did a strategic plan working with, I've gone through the Emerging Leader Program with that sponsored by the SBA. And Goldman Sachs has a 10,000 small business program that I just completed the end of 2019, I believe. Phenomenal programs, both of them. And both of them required me to do a growth plan. And my growth plan said that I was going to diversify my portfolio and I wanted to have, I think, 5 large corporate contracts within the next 3 years. That doesn't mean that I'm not going after small contracts in the corporate arena because I want to, you got to crawl before you walk. And you want to chew off little chewable chunks. So right now, in the immediate future, for the next, say, year, we're looking at building the relationship and then landing a couple of smaller contracts and then leading up to some of the larger contracts over the next 3 years.
So you have this team of 20 some odd people right now. It sounds like you've shifted. Are you doing any delivery work yourself, or is that all within the team currently?
I pick and choose.
Okay.
For the federal government, I have a staff that does 100% of that work.
Okay.
For the corporate work that we're designing, I pick and choose. I do some of it. So, not that this was a job, but I just finished today actually serving as the entrepreneur in residence for the Richland Library.
Right.
Loved every minute of it, and wish I could do more of it. But that was something that was passionate for me, and that was something that I felt like I had time to commit to.
Right.
I have a couple of corporate clients here locally that may be looking for some very high-level leadership development. I won't do all of the delivery, but I will participate in the delivery. Whereas in the past, I probably would have done all of it.
Yeah, no, I'm asking as well because I think, one of the shifts that it sounds like you've made over the years, Karen, is you've gone from doing a lot of the work, if not all of it yourself, to building the team. And now it gives you the ability to go out and say, okay, yeah, let's diversify into new markets. And I haven't heard you say, I mean, let me know if there is, but you haven't said, hey, we're going to go in and get a marketing firm just to do our marketing for us. You're really taking a lot of that business development role, spending the time building those relationships, planting those seeds with a view to the next 1 to 3 years to really make that happen. And I think that would be a real challenge. I know a lot of consultants have hard time spending time on their marketing and sales and business development, building relationships because they're so busy delivering on work. So any thoughts or recommendations or ideas or best practices that you would offer people who they might be in that place where it's just them, or maybe they're a small team of 5 or 10 people, but they're still really involved in the business in all aspects. Anything that they should be thinking about or looking for or doing to move to work more on the business and be able to do more strategic work rather than kind of hands-on work?
Yeah, so I wish years ago I would have learned this lesson, that I needed probably administrative assistant long before I hired one. There were so many things that I was doing that I had no business doing, even at a point where, at first it was chicken or the egg. You can't afford to bring somebody on.
Right.
So you don't, so you do everything. And then all of a sudden you get really busy, and now you can afford it, but you're too busy to slow down to find the right person. So outsourcing, I think, is a good strategy to not have to incur like a full labor staff person.
Sure.
So like I said, we hired out our payroll, we hired out our HR, and we were looking to hire out our marketing, but it was so expensive. And to be honest, when we were in the solely in federal space, that marketing strategy is so different that we didn't need a traditional marketing plan, a marketing strategy. Now that we're in the corporate space, we're having to switch gears a little bit. And we have interviewed several marketing firms that, just from a budgeting perspective, the monies that they wanted for what we were looking for was like, So we tried to hire a media specialist. She came in and worked with us for a few months. No, actually, it might have been I guess it was a couple of months. And it just wasn't a good fit. And we found a mini solution that is going to help us get around the social media, updating our website, sending out our news letters and blogs and that kind of stuff. So we're testing that out over the next 90 days. So I know business owners are like, this is mine. I created it, and nobody can do it better than me. Well, yeah, yes, they can. It used to be my thought, but it's a trust thing. There's so many people, Michael, that I think they get laid off, and then they think, oh, well, because I'm good at social media, because I'm doing it for myself, that I can go out and offer my social media services to this company, or I can be a consultant, or I can be a this and I can be a that. And I'm not undermining or talking about anybody, but you have to be careful about the people that you hire, because just because they put that consultant or that marketing or that specialist behind their names does not mean that they bring the skill set that you're looking for. Sometimes, you know, they're trying to make a, you know, a living for themselves, and your need may be a little higher than what they can give you. So ask for references, you know, ask for referrals from people that you know, you like what you see that they're producing, find out who they're using.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. It's, you know, it's one thing for someone to say like, yeah, I can do that, but it's another kind of whole other situation to actually see, have they done that before? Like, do they truly
Right.
understand your specific situation? And I think this is the mistake that a lot of consultants do make early on, is they try and actually outsource their marketing too early. And I mean like their marketing strategy, when the people that they might be getting to help them might be good at doing certain aspects of marketing, but they don't necessarily understand the market that they're targeting. Therefore, the strategy doesn't play out. But for someone
Right.
like yourself who, you know, understands the market, you know, has the strategy, but really is looking to get somebody to help them to support or roll that out, that's where bringing in other people or those that have experience doing that specifically before can really help.
Mike, I mean, I could not say that better. And I want to go back to what you said. With whoever you outsource to. So I've had people, I have a nonprofit, and somebody wanted me to outsource getting my nonprofit status. I did my 8A with the government, that somebody wanted me to outsource that. The issue with outsourcing is they can't do anything without your knowledge and your know-how and your guidance and your direction. You know, they're just kind of moving the tiddlywinks, right? But you have to design them. And if you don't know your vision, your mission, your elevator pitch, now they can help you come up with one if you don't have an elevator pitch. If you don't know what your core values are, you don't know what your brand identity is, and I think that's where they can kind of help you. You got to know those other things that so that they can help you create that. But all of that comes from you. It's not a here, take this and go handle it.
Right.
You are an integral part of defining what it is that you're looking for. And a good marketing firm will point that out to you in the beginning and say, you have to give me this, you have to design this in order for me to be effective.
Right. Karen, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today. A lot of great lessons and ideas and best practices that you shared. So I want to thank you for that. Where's the best place for people to go to learn more about your work and your team and just everything that you guys have going on?
Awesome. So our website is krjconsulting.com. We are also on social media at KRJ Consulting, and under my name, Karen R. Jenkins is my handle for all of the social media like Twitter and LinkedIn and everything. We'll definitely love to connect with your listeners.
Sounds good. Well, we'll have all that linked up in the show notes, guys. So if you're driving or out for a run, whatever it might be, and you want to come back to the transcript, the kind of the full-on article of today, or the resources and links, head over to consultingsuccess.com and you'll find that episode there. Karen, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.